One, we are live. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am here with the Executive Director of the Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine, David Trahan. And David is going to be talking about the $12 antlerless deer permit fee and where that's going to be allocated and what it is going to be used for. So, David, thank you so much for being here today.
Sure, thank you. I also have Becky Morrell with me. She represents Sam at many public events and is taking on a bigger role out in the public on issues like this. So she's over in the corner and patiently waiting and learning. So with that, I have been receiving a lot of questions related and a lot of confusion, to be honest with you, around what we did. Can you turn that off, the buzzer? Around what we did between the Land for Maine's future appropriation of $40 million and changes in that program, and then the Antlerless Deer permit restructuring. People are confusing the two of them, and I'm coming on to clear up some of that confusion, talk about the exciting things that are coming up related to the money that we're raising and some collaboration we're doing up in Aroostook County. So I'll begin with some questions I've received. First of all, there's two programs, the Land for Maine's Future program, and behind me are two maps, and I think it's important to reference the maps. Since the Land for Maine's Future program has been in existence, the map with the dots on it here, that map represents all of the Land for Maine's Future purchases that have occurred during its history. And I want you to see, and why this illustrates something important, is that program has been purchasing lands that are supposed to be open for all traditional uses, mostly in southern Maine. You can see most of the purchases along this coastal basin. One of the reasons we worked so hard to change that is we wanted, because of loss of habitat and hunting opportunities, we wanted to promote more of these projects in the mid part of the state and the northern part of the state that preserve deer wintering areas, but also created destinations for hunting, fishing, and other outdoor recreation. We were effective in making those changes. In the law, we directed that money to be spent in northern, eastern, and western Maine for a reason, because we wanted it in that region. So that's where the confusion begins. People that have confused the Antlerless Deer permit changes and the fees confused it with that information. But that's a separate program. That got a $40 million appropriation over 4 years, matched by at least 3-to-1 federal and private monies. So they'll be buying deer yards in that region where we need it. Also came along the Antlerless Deer restructuring. That we were involved in. Jerry Levine, who wrote the first deer permit system, is our consulting biologist. He helped restructure that Antlerless Deer permit system, the actual policy. The fee was the $12 in additional dollars that would go or would be incorporated into that new system for an additional deer, a second deer. So why this is very, very important is Inland Fisheries and Wildlife also owns a little over 100,000 acres in this very same region along the coast. Remember, think about that. The department that we're working with owns over 100,000 acres of land. We also know that in that land, in the coastal areas, are very few deer yards. Why it was so important to make ownership of those deer yards at IF&W was that when we started buying them in this region up above these coastal conserved lands, that Inland Fisheries and Wildlife owned them. So we could guarantee public access, hunting opportunity, and those types of activities would occur on them. And to also control how they're managed. And that the highest priority management would be deer. Now this is where the confusion begins. One individual in particular has been calling me and saying, well, I live in southern Maine, I'll pay the $12, but I don't want it all spent in northern, eastern, and western Maine. They're confused. The deer management account that I created, and I confirmed this before I said it publicly, all of that money that's generated by that $12 additional deer fee can be used statewide. It can be used on any property in the southern part of the state where Inland Fisheries and Wildlife owns land. It can be used to purchase deer yards in southern Maine. It can be used for a whole array of different things, as long as it expands and improves deer habitat, it addresses predation of deer, or enhances habitat. That is a clear difference. So you have two separate programs. The $12 fee, some people have said, well, we just don't want our money to go into a bureaucracy and disappear. I share their fears. That was why I drafted the legislation to guarantee that all of the money that was generated by the fee goes into the deer management account and must be spent for deer. Again, the only thing they can do with that is buy deer habitat, do deer predation control, or enhance deer hunting or deer herd itself. Now, I want to also clear up another misconception. I hear people say, well, we've got a lot of deer in southern Maine. We are overpopulated. That is not true. Bob Humphrey, who started this page, and I just met earlier today. We had a board meeting. He's on my board. And Jerry Levine have confirmed we do not have an overpopulation of deer in Maine. In the southern part of the state, they don't manage an overpopulated deer herd. They manage to a half carrying capacity, or what the land will sustain. We have 15 to 18 deer per square mile. Now, there are more deer in certain places, but that's addressed through the expanded archery and other management tools. But ultimately, we can take far more deer on the landscape, even in southern Maine, than we currently do. That changed a few years ago, and I objected to it at the time. When Jerry Levine was the deer biologist for the state, they always compared deer on the landscape to carrying capacity, what the land would sustain. They don't do that anymore. They manage to a more social carrying capacity, which means how many deer get hit by cars, how many complaints do you get, that sort of thing. They factor in social issues. That's not biology. So let's clear that up once and for all. There are not more deer in southern Maine than the landscape will sustain. It's the opposite. It'll actually sustain more. But what won't be sustainable is the public's tolerance of nuisance deer. Things like deer ticks and other things, damage to home, basically shrubbery and that sort of thing. So let's clear that up right now. Now, I want to get to what happens with your $12. Currently, the system that we had used in the past, it's not too long ago that you could shoot one deer. That could be a doe or a buck, and if you got a doe permit, once you shot your doe, you were done. That's not the new system. The new system, everyone can shoot one deer, a buck. If you want to apply for a doe permit, you can then shoot a second deer. That means you can get 2 deer now. That is not unprecedented. When you buy a September archery expanded zone permit, you pay the same amount for those additional deer. All we're doing is duplicating what happened with the September archery season for additional deer. Many other states do similar things. Again, one of the reasons that's important and why I think will help some of the people who are concerned where their money's going, when you pay that $12, it can be matched, and it will be matched by 3 federal dollars. So every $12 is $48. Those $48 go into expanding deer hunting opportunities statewide. And for your listeners, for those people who say, well, I just don't want to pay, I just want to shoot my deer, I'm not going to argue with you, because we don't look at it, Sam, we don't look at it that way. We represent all hunters statewide. We look for a healthy deer population for all hunters in the state. And that means giving new and better opportunities to people in northern, eastern, and western Maine. So that's what we look at. We're not going to try to chase that argument that it's been this way in the past and we just want to keep it that way. We are looking for a sustainable, healthy deer population statewide. That is our goal. And this program that's been established is unlike anything else in the nation. And I don't know of outside of this nation anything looks like this. The hunters of the state of Maine, led by my organization, have put in place every single tool necessary with all the protections on the money to invest between $6 and $7 million a year in bringing deer back across their state. That's unprecedented. And for those who say, well, why doesn't somebody else pay? We always pay. That's the reality of being a conservationist. Since the early 1900s, it has always been the sportsmen who were the conservation-minded people of this nation. They have invested dollars through ammo taxes, the Pittman-Robertson dollars, Dingle Johnson for fishing, and now the people of the state of Maine, the hunters, the true conservationists, are showing you that same ethic, that if the general population won't do it, it is so important to us in the future generations that we sustain all of our wildlife that we end up paying. That is an unfortunate reality, but it's also a strong sense of pride for all of you that are listening. Your $12 a year is going to build a sustainable wildlife population, deer, about 40 other species, and create healthy habitat across the state of Maine. That is a legacy, and it's something that all of us should be proud of. I am not going to shy away from defending what we have done. We as sportsmen and women are going to change the landscape. We've got all the resources to do it. We have the power of inland fisheries and wildlife and all of their expertise, and we have every ingredient, I believe, to achieve it. I've had a couple more questions that have been asked of me. Will the archery season change? And will Youth Day change? I had it confirmed in writing today that nothing will change for either of those. If you're concerned about being able to shoot an antlerless deer in archery season, don't worry about it. You can still do that. Same thing on Youth Day. Other than that, I got to be honest, I don't know what other questions need to be answered. But if people would like to write those questions down on the post, I will try to answer them.
Absolutely.
Do you have anything now?
Go ahead.
If you don't have anything, Daniel, I want to talk a little bit about an exciting, another component, another, I guess, leg on the stool that we're working on. You went with us, Becky, and we went up to Presque Isle, met with the Aroostook County Conservation Association, Jerry McLaughlin. We had a public meeting to talk about creating an Aroostook County whitetail deer collaboration. I'm going to explain to you why that's so important. The fund that we created can accept private money. That private money is also eligible for the 3-to-1 federal match. One of the concerns we had was that if people make donations to the fund, how do they ensure that it stays in the community in which they invested it? By creating this fund, which we established at Katahdin Trust, and working with the locals to raise money, we then put the money into that account at Katahdin Trust in Aroostook County. The rules on the account are only a member of SAM, along with ACCA, can approve spending the money. It must be spent in Aroostook County if it's raised in Aroostook County. By doing that, we can then negotiate with Inland Fisheries and Wildlife to invest in those same deer yards that they're purchasing. We can add land to it, get the 3-to-1 federal match. For example, we raise $10,000, a lot comes on the market adjoining a deer yard, and they want X amount of dollars for it. We can make an arrangement with the department that we will go out and raise the money to buy it. They will use the federal match, turn $1 into $4, and then we purchase the deer, that lot, to add to the deer yard. So we can keep making those deer yards bigger. And landowners that are adjoining those deer yards can contribute to restoring the deer. In addition to that, if Inland Fisheries and Wildlife says something like, we have 50 acres of fields on this deer wintering area property, and that property can be as much as 6,000 to 7,000 acres. We'd like to plant food plots on 100 acres. Would you contribute some money so we can trigger the federal match? We would then consider doing that and doing a habitat improvement on the property. They may say to us, look, coyotes are moving in. They're decimating the deer herd in this deer wintering area. Would you contribute $1,000 toward predator management? We might consider doing that. Those are the types of projects that we will create. What we'll do is we will raise money each year, put it in that fund, and meet quarterly to determine how we're going to spend the money. What I think is equally exciting is the people who have engaged already. Long Road Energy, when we were doing the public meeting, we had no idea they were coming. They came and committed a $10,000 check. During the following week or so, week and a half, Jerry McLaughlin raised another $5,000. So without doing a shred of work, we've already raised $15,000, which will then trigger the federal match. We have almost $50,000 to spend already. That's exciting. We have 8 members we've chosen for that committee, that collaboration, 4 from the ACCA, 4 from SAM. We will, I think it's next week, next Tuesday, we're going to do an organizational meeting, formalize our rules, how we'll spend the money, and we'll begin raising money. We'll meet with local chambers, local businesses, and try to raise $100,000 a year, being our goal for this purpose. For those out there who are wondering, well, are we buying deer yards? Yes. There was 1,000 acres announced in the last round of LMF in Aroostook County. There's at least 1, if not 2 more projects being considered in Aroostook County. So I can say with confidence that yes, we will be buying deer yards. Is this restricted to Aroostook County? No. This is a model for the rest of the state. We knew that going in. If we established a model in Aroostook County, we could take that same model and move to Piscataquis, Somerset, Hancock County, and come right in with a finished product and say, this is what we did in Aroostook County. Do you want to do this in your community? And we'll offer the same partnership. So with that, that's everything I have. If people have questions, I'd love to answer them. And if not, Daniel, if you have any questions, I'll answer them as well.
Yeah, we got a couple, actually not quite related to this, but general overall questions on the new system. But I wanted to I wanted to discuss with you the Long Road Energy donation.
Yeah, sure. There's going to be a proposed, I think it already has been proposed project in Aroostook County. It's an energy project. It's a combination wind and solar. Now, we did not commit to support any projects, so let's just get that done. But many of these companies, when they are establishing projects in communities, their money ends up going somewhere. They invest money in a community. It can go to hiking trails. It might go to a conservation project.
I'm trying to make you be the center of your
Sure.
screen.
How would I move over?
That would be, I didn't want to interrupt
Sure.
you.
So these energy companies and all of these projects invest money in the community. Now, we don't judge them. We actually, our members have some concerns with commercial wind, but that's secondary. Somebody's going to receive a check when every one of those energy projects comes forward. I think Long Road recognized that it's an incredibly high priority in Aroostook County for the people living there. They constantly hear we need to invest in saving our deer yards. To their credit, they recognized that, came to the meeting and said, we agree with you, and we want to be a partner and we want to help. And they also said, whether this project goes forward or not, we want to help. They gave Jerry a check for $10,000 for seed money, which is precedent. We as sportsmen, when these projects are being negotiated, I believe need to be at the table and say, you're going to put this money into this community? We don't want it to go to one entity just to kind of be absorbed in something that makes people feel good. We want to invest in the community in something that will happen and be generational, meaning a change in the community, a conserved land, And that's what we're trying to focus on, because this could become a model for these other energy projects that are going on around the state. Every one of these solar projects has an impact on wildlife. We've been advocating that when you fence in 500-acre solar project, no wildlife can ever use it again. That comes at a cost to wildlife, to our way of life. We want to mitigate that, and we will introduce legislation to mitigate that problem in the next session. If you can't mitigate by changing the fencing to allow wildlife to use it, then you pay for the impacts on the land. And that's where a fund like this would come in. The state does this currently with wetlands. They mitigate at a 7-to-1 ratio right now when impacting wetlands. We think wildlife deserves the same respect as wetlands. So that should answer your question. It was a long answer, but it is why we are pushing to get investments in land that we know is getting gobbled up in commercial energy development.
Yeah. And, you're right, because so much land is being gobbled up for these projects. Excuse me, to have them give back in a way that is meaningful to the landscape is outstanding.
Yeah.
So
well, we're not done. 10,000 in a project the size that they're going to develop. We're expecting to partner, but we want any project across Maine, not just this company. They've actually been proactive. We want those folks to think, I think, more in depth into the impacts that they're having on the landscape and invest accordingly. Yep,
absolutely. Now, the registration fee that when we take our deer and we go to the tagging station and we pay that registration fee, I understand that something else is going to happen with a portion of that fee.
You're actually, when I created the fund over a dozen years ago, I got a $2 portion of the tagging fee dedicated into this deer management account. So for over 10 years, the money has accumulated from the $2 that goes into that fund. Again, it was specified half of it must be used for predation control, the other half for habitat. That accumulated about $500,000 in that account. So currently, that deer management account has been collecting that fee, but it's all been invested back into deer. So most people, when they were tagging their deer, had no idea that they were investing in their future. That money is also eligible for federal match. So your $2 registration fee dedicated to that account is now $8, or it has been $8 when it's invested back in the land.
Outstanding. We do have a quick question. It's basically just on the system itself, and maybe you can answer the question. I know I can, but we'll let you answer it. Can you buy multiple tags? For instance, if I purchase a Zone 22 tag, I then get the opportunity to hunt with a buddy in Zone 16, and assuming there were tags left, could I buy a Zone 16 tag, even though my Zone 22 tag has yet to be filled?
I don't believe, I think the way the legislative committee intended was you use your permit and then you can buy another one.
Yep.
But having spoke with Nate Webb, the wildlife director for Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, he said that they're doing a massive rollout of information, facts, questions, and it's coming in a week or so. Okay, they will be answering all of the questions that you are bringing up. They'll do outreach, informational sessions if necessary. Nathan Bieber, their deer biologist, is going to do a piece in it as well. So they're going to be doing a really large education program answering those types of questions. I want to circle back for a minute to bring everyone back into the loop as to why we're doing this. Remember the maps behind me, and I pointed out all the Land for Maine's future projects in the southern part of the state. Part of the statute says that all of those lands purchased must be open for traditional recreation, including hunting, fishing, and trapping. In those heavily populated areas in the southern part of the state, that's nearly impossible. It is so heavily populated with people because of a state law that says in all marked hiking trails, you cannot hunt or discharge a firearm within 300 feet of either side of that trail. That means for all of those hiking trails in the southern part of the state, hunting is virtually impossible. One reason we wanted to move in to the northern part of the state is we also want hunting access. We want people to have places to go. When we start buying up these properties, we're going to expand our opportunities. That posted land that we see all over the landscape, it's public land and it'll be open to hunting and managed for that purpose. So it's going to create destinations across our state for hunters, not just deer hunters, moose, bear, birds, fishing, hiking, bird watching, you name it. Some of these lots will be in the 6,000 to 7,000 acre parcels. But this second map is incredibly important for this reason. If you overlay the land for Maine's future purchases onto this second map, in the shaded area on the second map is where Inland Fisheries and Wildlife wants to expand the deer population. That's why buying those lands is so crucial. Right now we have deer in the zones that are marked in white. We have a declining, if not completely absent, deer herd in the shaded areas. For all of you hunters out there, every time that line, that white line of demarcation goes north, it's more opportunity for you. They are large landowners in those regions. Much of that will be owned by the state. You won't have the kind of conflicts that you have along the coast. Our opportunities, as that line moves north, are going to expand. As the deer herd expands, more doe permits will be available. That also means more money available to invest in deer. It is a win-win from all angles. As sportsmen, our money will compound. As we succeed, our efforts will compound. And eventually that line, hopefully, will disappear. And we'll be managing every zone in this state as if we managed the southern part of the state. That's the goal.
And I think it's a very important distinction you make too, that not only is this just about the purchasing of and setting aside for traditional recreation, but it's also going to be managed.
Yes, correct. Year round, 365 days out of the year. Winter, summer, it'll be managed for habitat. It will have major investments in habitat improvement, constant predator control. Access points will constantly be improved. These are going to become destinations. And if you take a 7,000 acre parcel and you restore deer to the surrounding region, it's not just the 7,000 acres. It's the 15 or 20,000 acres around it that have a healthier deer population. That same habitat is necessary for other species as well. When we saw a decline in deer because of the loss of habitat, there were almost 40 species that depended on the same habitat. Those same 40 species are also in need of healthier habitat. So you're not just investing in deer, you're investing in all wildlife.
Yep.
And as a conservationist myself, and I'm proud to say it, what better investment of your $12 a year can you find?
Not much of one.
No. So, are there any other questions, Daniel?
Not on this at the moment. And if anybody does have any questions, you can go ahead and leave them on the post, and we'll get David to answer them as best as he can. And I would also like to say that as soon as this information comes out from, like you said, from Nate Webb and Nate Beaver, we will get that posted up immediately so everybody understands what this new system is going to be about and how it's going to be worked.
That's right. If you like what we're doing, and I would say to your listeners, in my lifetime, if you could have told me we could pull this off, I would have said you're crazy. Yep. What we just did was landmark. It's probably in North America, it's unparalleled. The Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine, with our partners, including the Maine deer hunters, did this. It shows the value of being a SAM member, to be part of something that is trying to look at the big picture and promote the future for all of us. I encourage people to join SAM. We're a growing organization. We have incredible influence in the political process. But more importantly, I believe we have our priorities straight.
Yep.
And for that, I hope people will consider joining. They can do so by going to our website, samofmaine.org, or calling our office at 623-4589. And with that, thank you, Daniel. And as I promised, I would keep it under an hour.
Awesome. David, thank you so much. Becky, thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm going to bring her over here if she'll join us. She's very shy, but she's getting better. Come on over, Becky.
Hey, Becky.
For those who are SAM members, for those that are SAM members, when you call here, she's the one who's really in charge. People call her when they need something done around here. And she's going to be involved more in our policy work and out in the field. And so I thought I would introduce her to folks. Hey, Beck. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Daniel.
Thank you so much. And again, please consider joining SAM. And you can do that at www.samofmaine.org. And with that, when we get some more information on this new system, we'll get it out to you as soon as possible. With that, thank you so much, everybody. David and Becky, hang with me for a minute, though.
Sure.
Okay.